Chapter 488 to 489. After the evacuation drill was finished, the celebration continued for the next 2 hours. Time passed and everyone started to get drunk and tired and sleepy. Whoever was tired and drunk and sleepy would just sleep on his chair by leaning her head on the table. While everyone was either distracted or sleeping, Kurenai quietly approached Kuroto and sat on the empty seat on his left side. After a moment of silence, she poured sake into 2 cups and passed one of the cups to Kuroto. "Captain, let's have a drink together." Weird, thought Kuroto internally and became vigilant. But externally he smiled in appreciation and took the cup Kurenai passed to him with his left hand. Of course. Secretly he analyzed the sake in the cup, and after making sure that it wasn't drugged with any kind of drug, he took a light sip in silence, while his right hand was gently rubbing the back of Yui, who was sleeping on the chair on his right side. The reason for Kuroto's vigilance is the term Kurenai used to refer to him. When not on umbu duties or training, Kurenai would refer to Kuroto as Kuroto-kun, but the fact she used captain implies that she is talking to him as a subordinate, which is kind of odd considering that they are not on umbu duties. Of course, it can also be assumed that Kurenai said so because she is drunk, but Kuroto would never believe it. The reason is also very simple. Among the contemporaries of his generation, Kurenai's alcohol tolerance is the highest. In fact, it wouldn't even be wrong to say that no matter how much she drinks, she never even gets tipsy, much less drunk. This is one of the reasons why Kuroto generally uses Kurenai to gather information from various izakaya when performing umbu missions. So Kurenai also excels in intelligence gathering just like Jiraiya. And perhaps the reason she has approached Kuroto this time is also that she wants to get some kind of intelligence out of him. After having a few bottles of sake in silence, Kurenai lowered her voice and asked in a casual tone, "Captain, I have always been curious about the Hyuga clan. I have heard that the Hyuga clan is divided into the main family and the branch family of the Hyuga clan. And there are not many members in the main family. Is that really the case?" Kuroto looked at Kurenai with a suspicious gaze and nodded. Kurenai then asked with a curious tone, "And do you know all of them?" Kuroto frowned and nodded again. The main family of the Hyuga clan comprises the patriarch's line and several elders' lines. The reason for having extra elders' lines is to prevent the collapse of the main family, in case the patriarch's line disappears all of a sudden due to any number of reasons. Of course, the elders' lines are extremely low-key, and more than often they will not leave the grounds of the Hyuga clan, or make themselves exposed to any kind of danger. Or else there is a distinct possibility that they will be specifically targeted for their Byakugan. Therefore, very few people outside of the Hyuga clan are aware of the existence of the elders' lines of the main family of the Hyuga clan. Of course, in terms of rules, the elders' lines are no different from the patriarch's line. So no matter how many heirs there are in each generation, only one person is eligible to be exempted from being marked with the caged bird cursed seal to act as an alternative in case the patriarch's line disappears for some reason. Of course, the role of the elders' line is not just to act as the replacement. One of the rules is that the marriage partners of the patriarch's line always come from the elders' line. In fact, Kuroto's mother was also a member of the elders' line, but as mentioned earlier, there can only be one exemption for each generation. So his mother was also marked with the caged bird cursed seal, and was later transferred to the branch family, after which she married Kuroto's father, who was actually her servant and guardian during her days as a member of the main family. Pretty neat master-servant love story, wouldn't you agree? But anyway, not getting sidetracked anymore, when it comes to the main family, even if all the members of the main family are counted, the number of people who are not marked with the caged bird cursed seal will never exceed more than 10, and Kuroto, because of his current high status within the branch family of the Hyuga clan, does indeed knows of all the members of main family. Receiving an affirmative nod from Kuroto, Kurenai thought a little, then asked with a bit of hesitation, "Does anyone in the main family of the Hyuga clan has white hair?" The hair color of the Hyuga clansmen is majorly dark. Most people have either brown or black hair color such as Kuroto or Niji and Yui or Hinata respectively. There are also clansmen with dark blue, dark green, and dark purple hair colors, but each of these hair colors has black tinge on them. But there has never been a Hyuga clansman having white hair. So the fact that Kurenai is asking this question from Kuroto clearly indicates that she is trying to investigate Futen. Thinking so, Kuroto thought, so that's her game? Does she want to privately investigate Futen? Or is it that she suspects me to be Futen because of our similar appearances? That is why she did not report anything about Futen to the village. These thoughts were only internal. Externally, he replied to Kurenai without much thought. "As far as I know, there is no member of the main family who has white hair." None. Kurenai was stunned. She thought that since there are not many members in the main family of the Hyuga clan, so it should be easy to identify Futen with those characteristic features, but unexpectedly Kuroto gave her the opposite answer. Looking at Kurenai's stunned expression, Kuroto narrowed his eyes slightly and asked with a slightly curious tone, "Why do you ask?" Kurenai quickly recovered and waved her hand casually. "Nothing, I was just curious is all." Kuroto squinted his eyes and thought to himself in silence, "It appears that I underestimated her. Never did I expect that her thoughts would be so deep." She wants to use my Futen clone as a breakthrough point to investigate Amatsukami, huh? Kurenai sighed, lightly took a sip of sake in silence and thought, Futen is strong enough to fight Shodame Hokage-sama, Naidame Hokage-sama, and Orochimaru at the same time. He is the strongest shinobi I have ever seen or known. How can Kuroto-kun not know about this kind of clansman? Or is it possible that his existence was kept a secret from all, because he possessed Shikatsu Miyaku of the Kagaya clan? And he left the Hyuga clan at a very young age. This must be the case. Immediately, Kurenai became a bit worried. But if this is indeed the case, then I won't be able to find anything about Futen, even if I search for any information about him in the Hyuga clan. What to do? What to do? Should I give up? No. How can I give up so easily? I must continue to search for him. As long as we are both alive, our paths will definitely cross again. Moreover, Kuroto-kun and Futen are quite similar in appearances. Perhaps they are distant brothers, might know something about each other, but are hesitant to tell others. Thinking so, Kurenai's gaze subconsciously turned towards Kuroto's face, and Kuroto, who was also thinking a few things related to Kurenai's thought, looked at her, and two pairs of thoughtful eyes intertwined. If I continue to work with Kuroto-kun, who is also a member of the Hyuga clan, sooner or later, I am bound to land on any piece of news about Futen. Thought Kurenai. You want to investigate information about Amatsukami secretly, huh? Well, as long as you are my subordinate, I will make sure that you get absolutely nothing, thought Kuroto. The two people who were again not on the same channel looked at each other with friendly smiles and continued to drink sake in peaceful silence. Just before everyone was about to leave, Asuma, who was a little drunk, plucked out the courage and asked Kurenai to go on a hot spring trip together, but was politely turned down by the thoughtful Kurenai. Perhaps it was because hate had persuaded Asuma before, so he was psychologically prepared to be turned down and didn't feel frustrated about it. On the contrary, Kakashi on the side was desperate. He held the Aika paradise in his hands and kept muttering to himself, "How can this be possible? This is nirvana. Why did it fail?" Looking at these two idiots, Kuroto sighed. But he didn't care too much, just carried the sleeping Yui on his back and slowly walked towards his home in the direction of the Hyuga clan, while enjoying the cold wind brushing his cheeks and rustling his clothes. Tonight was a peaceful moonless night, muttered Kuroto as he looked up at the clear night sky that had no trace of the moon. For the next 2 days, Kuroto continued trying to contact Shursui and Itachi, but he, as well as the crow clones of both Shursui and Itachi, found no news. Even the summons are unable to deliver the message. What kind of trial are those two undergoing? Or is it possible that those two really had an accident? Muttered Kuroto with a slightly worried look. Although Kuroto believes in the strength of Shursui and Itachi and knows that the two of them would remain safe, it has already been more than a week, yet there is no sign of those two, so he can't help but be worried a little. But no matter how much worried Kuroto is, the two crow clones of Itachi and Shursui are still present in Konoha, which means that those two are not dead, so all he can do is have faith in them and continue with the matters on his end. With this thought, Kuroto created a shadow clone, gave him the gourd of Toyotama/Ryumyaku, then transferred his soul into the Futen clone, wore his Fujin disguise, and made his way toward Shimura Danzo's secret base of operation. Because of his last visit, the Root Kunoichi with whom Fujin had a small scuffle previously recognized him quickly, of course. This time she did not attack him directly. Instead, she greeted Fujin politely and led him to the Root base. Soon, Fujin met up with Shimura Danzo at his new base of operation, who was waiting for Fujin, which wasn't surprising considering Fujin's arrival was already known to Shimura Danzo. However, this time too, there was an additional person with Danzo, and much to Fujin's surprise, it was none other than Orochimaru against whom Fujin had fought before. As soon as Fujin Danzo noticed Fujin's arrival, he signaled the Root Kunoichi to leave, then spoke to Fujin. Orochimaru here was specially invited by me to help me complete the Kekkei Genkai absorption ritual. Although Shimura Danzo appreciates Amatsukami, and more specifically Fujin, however, Danzo does not trust Amatsukami. At the same time, he does not trust Orochimaru either. So he hopes that Orochimaru and Fujin of the Amatsukami will restrain each other and be used by him at the same time. Following Danzo's words, Orochimaru nodded lightly. A pleasure to be able to work with Fujin of Amatsukami. Orochimaru's expression may be at ease, but his heart was thumping violently, and his mind wasn't at ease either. It wouldn't be wrong to say that as soon as he saw Fujin, Orochimaru was extremely vigilant and ready to run away at a moment's notice should the situation escalate. But he didn't mention anything about the battle he had with Fujin a few days ago. The sideliners will feel as if Orochimaru had never ever fought against Fujin, and is on friendly terms with Fujin. But Shimura Danzo didn't think so. He clearly knew about the fact that Yuhi Kurenai, an umbu of the elite Team Ro, was kidnapped by Orochimaru a few days ago, and when Orochimaru was taking her somewhere, the two coincidentally encountered Fujin. Orochimaru and Fujin ended up having a fight, which gave Yuhi Kurenai the opportunity to escape from Orochimaru's hands. When Danzo showed Orochimaru the report Yuhi Kurenai submitted to the Hokage, Orochimaru just smiled a little, but did not specifically say that it was incorrect, which means that it was more than likely to be correct. Although Danzo doesn't know what Orochimaru wanted to use Yuhi Kurenai for, he, however, believes that it must be quite important. But because of Fujin's interruption, Orochimaru was unable to use Yuhi Kurenai to fulfill whatever purpose he had. Therefore, there must be deep hostility between Orochimaru and Fujin. This hostility between the two also gives Shimura Danzo the confidence to be able to make use of both Orochimaru and Fujin, which the two of them restrain each other. Of course, Yuhi Kurenai's uncertain relationship with Fujin must also be confirmed, so Shimura Danzo has already assigned Uchiha Itachi a mission to keep a watch over Yuhi Kurenai too, in addition to Hyuga Kuroto, as he always does. After all, Uchiha Itachi is his double agent in the Umbu and the Uchiha clan. Danzo has specifically observed the child since his academy days and understands the child's precociousness and mature thinking. Therefore, he has been indirectly training Uchiha Itachi for years to be a perfect nail buried within the Uchiha clan, and personally recommended Uchiha Itachi to be recruited into the Umbu. And that's not all. Shimura Danzo has also dispatched his subordinates to investigate the area marked in the map, submitted by Yuhi Kurenai. The purpose is to find and analyze the true extent of Fujin and Orochimaru's strength. As they say, today's friend could be tomorrow's enemy. So Shimura Danzo would obviously be cautious against the likes of Fujin and Orochimaru. Futen was obviously unaware of Shimura Danzo's thoughts. He just nodded towards Orochimaru in a casual tone. A pleasure indeed, Orochimaru. This one sincerely hopes that when working together we can make great progress. Similar to Orochimaru, he too didn't mention anything about the battle a few days ago. Of course, internally, Fujin had other thoughts. TCH, I didn't expect that Orochimaru would also appear here. Does he have the same idea as me? Using Shimura Danzo as a pawn to further study the Chimera Jutsu? But why does Orochimaru has a sudden interest in the Chimera Jutsu? He didn't really think that it is because Orochimaru mistook that Fujin has also used the Chimera Jutsu to acquire multiple Kekkei Genkai, just like Hiriko, and seeing the unbelievable strength of Hiriko and Fujin, Orochimaru reevaluated the Chimera Jutsu and decided to research it in more depth to better understand it and its true potential. And since he didn't think so, therefore, Fujin could only wonder in confusion and attribute it to the butterfly effect. With greetings out of the way, let's proceed to the main laboratory. Follow me, you two, said Danzo, and led the two to the laboratory of his base. The underground laboratory is extremely large, fully equipped, and highly advanced. There are many types of new types of equipment that Fujin hasn't even seen before in his life, so when saw the scene before him, he was literally baffled. If Danzo and Orochimaru had any means to look past Fujin's mask, they would have noticed his eyes shining and saliva overflowing from his mouth. In greed, but unfortunately, they couldn't, so Fujin could still maintain his dignity. Calm down yourself, and for now, focus on the objective at hand. After Shimura Danzo is dealt with, everything in here will be yours. Thinking so, Fujin controlled his greed and calmly followed Shimura Danzo. After walking for a while, the three reached the cell culture site, and looking at a petri dish in front of him, Danzo said, "My subordinates have analyzed the characteristics and features of the Chimera buds, and the result surprised me. Controlling the Chimera buds is really much more difficult than I had expected previously." "Obviously. Otherwise, why do you think I am here using you as a pawn?" thought Fujin internally, but externally he nodded with a calm tone. Yes, this one warned Shimura-san at the beginning. After a pause, Fujin took out a scroll from the inner part of his Fujin cloak, passed it to Shimura Danzo, and said, "Our organization seized this scroll from Shino before killing him. It records the data of the Chimera buds used by Hiriko along with many other details. This one think that it will prove to be helpful for Shimura-san." Danzo nodded, took the scroll from Fujin's hands, read it once, then immediately handed it to Orochimaru, who was standing on the side. Orochimaru wasn't surprised when Danzo handed him the scroll, and in fact, he had expected Danzo to give the scroll to him. After all, science is not the field that Shimura Danzo specializes in. So obviously, Danzo can't understand what such complicated data entails. Orochimaru looked at the scroll with an extremely serious expression, and after analyzing and postulating for a while, he said in a hoarse tone, "These reading and analysis will be very useful for the experimentation." Fujin nodded towards Orochimaru, then turned towards Shimura Danzo and asked, "Shimura-san, tell this about your plan to restrain the Chimera buds." Fujin wasn't too worried about the ritual, because Hiriko has already completed it once. So, as long as the accurate steps are followed, the probability of success is very high. Fujin cares more about the development and restriction methods of the Chimera buds, and the most important part is how to effectively control the Chimera buds to make sure that Chimera buds don't take control. This is the key factor of his cooperation with Shimura Danzo. Tap tap. Danzo lightly struck his crutch to the ground, following which, one of the researchers in a white coat came towards the three. He pushed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and said, "We plan to use Fuinjutsu. After engraving seals on the Chimera buds before implanting them, we plan to control the Chimera buds using those seals during the ritual." "Using Fuinjutsu, huh?" thought Fujin to himself. Using Fuinjutsu was also the first method Fujin thought of back when he was studying the Chimera buds. However, the nature of Chimera buds is quite special. It has no fixed shape or form as it continues to change. Most of the Fuinjutsu Fujin knew and used didn't match the basic requirements, while the ones that did match the basic requirement weren't effective enough in restraining the Chimera buds. In Fujin's understanding, this is because the shape and form of the Chimera buds keep changing and distorting, so the seal will instantly collapse. And pondering for a while, Fujin decided not to conceal this problem and expressed it clearly. Further improvement and development of the Chimera buds is the real key to achieving Kekiai Mora. Therefore, even if Fujin regards Shimura Danzo as a good pawn, he still intends to completely devote himself to the research and development of the Chimera buds. Therefore, Fujin is not leaving behind any information that would prove to be effective in further improvement of the Chimera buds. After listening to Fujin's reasoning, Orochimaru thought a little and suggested, "If I am not incorrect, Uzumaki clan did have a few Fuinjutsu that can continuously alter the shape of the seal as per the command of the user, such as the adamant sealing chains. Perhaps we can try using it." Undoubtedly, Orochimaru has the same intentions as Fujin. Therefore, he too did not hide any information that can improve the stability and controllability of the Chimera buds.